The day Emma Peterson arrived in Guthrie, Oklahoma Territory in May of 1892, her emerald eyes scanned the dusty main street with equal parts hope and dread, clutching her 5-year-old son's hand so tightly that the child winced and tried to pull away. Whispers followed her like shadows as she walked past the general store, the mercantile, and the saloon, the townsfolk's eyes drawn first to her pretty face, then to her son, and finally to her unaccompanied status. A woman with a child but no husband was something that demanded explanation in a place like Guthrie. "Mama, you're hurting my hand," whispered Thomas, his blue eyes so like his father's, looking up at her in confusion. Emma immediately loosened her grip. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. Just stay close to me, all right?" She forced a smile, though her chest felt tight with anxiety. The journey from St. Louis had been long and arduous, but she'd been promised a position as a schoolteacher here. Her credentials were impeccable, and the town's growing population of settlers and their children needed education. The letter from the town council had been encouraging, mentioning nothing about her status as a widow, a small lie she'd included in her application. Patrick hadn't died. He'd simply disappeared one night after a terrible argument, leaving her with a 3-year-old son and mounting debts. She approached the town hall, a modest wooden structure with a small bell tower. The afternoon sun beat down mercilessly, and she was acutely aware of her travel-worn appearance. Her dark green traveling dress was wrinkled, and her auburn hair was coming loose from its pins, but she squared her shoulders and pushed open the door. Inside, 4 men sat around a table, looking up as she entered. The oldest of them, a portly gentleman with a thick gray mustache, stood. "Miss Peterson, I presume?" he asked, his voice carrying a note of disapproval that made Emma's heart sink. "I'm Mayor Fitzgerald. We received your telegram about your arrival today." "Yes, sir. Thank you for meeting with me," Emma said, keeping her voice steady despite her nerves. "This is my son, Thomas." The mayor's eyes flickered to the boy, then back to Emma. "I see. Your application mentioned you were a widow." "Yes, sir. My husband passed away 2 years ago," she lied smoothly, having rehearsed this story countless times. One of the other men, thin and severe-looking with spectacles perched on his nose, cleared his throat. "Curious. Then, that we received correspondence from St. Louis indicating otherwise." Emma felt the blood drain from her face. I don't understand." "It seems your husband didn't die, Mrs. Peterson. He abandoned you." The man's voice was cold with judgment. "We cannot have a woman of questionable virtue teaching the children of this town." "My virtue is not questionable," Emma replied, her voice trembling with indignation. "I've done nothing wrong." "Perhaps not," said the mayor, looking uncomfortable but resolute, "but appearances matter in a position such as the one you applied for. Parents won't stand for their children being taught by a woman whose husband saw fit to leave her." Thomas pressed closer to Emma's skirts, sensing her distress. She placed a protective hand on his shoulder. "What am I to do then?" "I've spent nearly all my money to come here. I was promised a position." The third man, younger than the others with kind eyes, spoke up. "The boarding house has a position for a maid. It's not teaching, but it would provide you with a roof and meals for you and your boy." Emma felt humiliation burn through her, but she nodded. "Thank you. I'll take it." As she left the town hall, the whispers seemed louder, the stares more pointed. Word traveled fast in small towns, and by the time she reached the boarding house, everyone in Guthrie seemed to know that the new schoolteacher wasn't a widow at all, but a woman so deficient that her husband had abandoned her. The boarding house was a 2-story wooden structure with a wide porch. The proprietress, Mrs. Holloway, a stern woman with graying hair pulled back in a tight bun, showed Emma to a small room at the back of the house that she would share with Thomas. "You'll start tomorrow morning at 5 o'clock, Mrs. Holloway said. "Your duties will include cleaning the rooms, helping with the laundry, and assisting in the kitchen. Room and board for you and the boy are included, plus $2 a week." "Thank you," Emma replied, trying to hide her disappointment. She'd spent years earning her teaching certificate, working hard to create a better life for herself and Thomas. Now she was back to scrubbing floors. That night, as Thomas slept, Emma sat by the small window of their room, looking out at the stars that hung over Guthrie. She'd chosen this town because it was new, established only 3 years earlier during the land run, and she'd thought a fresh settlement might be more accepting. She'd been wrong. The next morning, she was up before dawn, dressing quietly so as not to wake Thomas. Mrs. Holloway had agreed that the boy could stay in the kitchen while Emma worked, as long as he stayed out of the way. Emma gently woke her son, helped him dress, and led him downstairs. The kitchen was already bustling with activity. A plump woman with rosy cheeks was kneading dough on a large wooden table. "You must be Emma," she said with a warm smile. "I'm Clara, the cook. And who's this handsome young man?" "This is Thomas," Emma said, grateful for the friendly face. "I hope he won't be in the way." "Nonsense," Clara replied. "He can help me roll out biscuits. My own boys are grown and gone now, so I'll enjoy the company." Emma spent the morning cleaning rooms, stripping beds, and carrying heavy baskets of laundry to the wash-house behind the boarding house. By midday, her hands were red and raw, her back aching from bending and scrubbing. But the worst part was when the boarders spoke about her as if she wasn't there. "I heard her husband left her in the dead of night," whispered a woman as Emma dusted the parlor. "What kind of woman drives her husband away like that?" "Probably caught her with another man," replied her companion. Emma gripped the duster so tightly her knuckles turned white, but she kept her face carefully blank. She couldn't afford to lose this position, no matter how demeaning. Days turned into weeks, and the gossip showed no signs of abating. Emma kept her head down and worked hard, saving every penny she could. In the evenings, she taught Thomas his letters and numbers, determined that he would have the education she'd been denied the opportunity to provide to others. One afternoon, about a month after their arrival in Guthrie, Emma was hanging laundry in the yard when she noticed a commotion on the main street. A cattle drive was coming through town, and the citizens of Guthrie had gathered to watch the spectacle. Emma called Thomas, who was playing with a stick and a stone nearby, and they joined the crowd. The cattle moved through the street in a dusty, bellowing mass, guided by cowboys on horseback. It was an impressive sight, one that Thomas watched with wide-eyed wonder. "Look, Mama," he exclaimed, pointing to a tall cowboy on a magnificent black stallion. The man was indeed a striking figure. He sat tall in the saddle, his broad shoulders covered by a dust-coated duster. A worn Stetson pulled low over his eyes. He expertly guided his horse with subtle movements, keeping the cattle moving in the right direction. As the last of the herd passed through town, the cowboy turned his horse and dismounted in front of the saloon. It was only then that Emma got a clear look at his face. He was younger than she'd expected, perhaps in his late 20s, with a strong jaw covered in several days' worth of stubble. His eyes were a piercing blue, and when they briefly met Emma's, she felt an unexpected jolt. "That's Samuel Quinn," said Mrs. Holloway, who had appeared beside Emma. "He's the foreman for the Circle Q ranch. They drive cattle through here twice a year." "Is the ranch nearby?" Emma asked, curious despite herself. "About a day's ride west," Mrs. Holloway replied. "Mr. Quinn's a respected man around these parts, fair and honest from what I hear, though he keeps to himself mostly." Emma watched as Samuel Quinn disappeared into the saloon, then turned to take Thomas back to the boarding house. She had laundry to finish, and daydreaming about handsome cowboys wasn't going to put food on the table or secure a future for her son. The next day, Emma was in the kitchen helping Clara prepare breakfast when Mrs. Holloway bustled in, looking flustered. "The cowboys from the Circle Q are staying in town for a few days to rest before heading back to the ranch," she announced. "3 of them have taken rooms here, including Mr. Quinn himself. Clara, make sure there's plenty of food. Emma, I need you to make up the rooms on the 2nd floor immediately." Emma hurried upstairs with fresh linens. As she was making up the last room, she heard heavy footsteps in the hallway. Looking up, she found herself face to face with Samuel Quinn. Up close, he was even more imposing. His shoulders nearly filled the doorway, and his eyes were the color of a clear summer sky. He removed his hat, revealing thick, dark hair that curled slightly at the ends. "Pardon me, madam," he said, his voice a deep baritone. "I didn't realize my room wasn't ready yet." "It's nearly done, sir," Emma replied, smoothing the quilt over the bed. Just a moment more. He nodded and stepped back into the hallway, but not before she caught him glancing at her with something that might have been interest. Emma felt a flush creep up her neck and focused on finishing her task. Later that day, as Emma was serving dinner in the boarding house dining room, she noticed Samuel Quinn watching her. Whenever she caught his eye, he would look away, but his attention made her uncomfortably aware of herself, of her plain, worn dress, of her hair pulled back in a simple bun, of the calluses forming on her once smooth hands. Thomas, who was helping Clara by carrying bread baskets to the tables, stopped beside Mr. Quinn's chair. "Are you really a cowboy?" he asked, his eyes wide with admiration. Emma moved quickly to intervene. "Thomas, don't bother the gentleman while he's eating," she said, reaching for her son's hand. "He's no bother, madam," Samuel Quinn replied with a slight smile. Then, to Thomas, "Yes, son, I am indeed a cowboy. Have you ever seen a cattle drive before?" "Just yesterday," Thomas exclaimed. "Your horse is the biggest I've ever seen." "That's Shadow," Samuel said. "He's a good horse, strong and smart." "Can I see him up close?" Thomas asked eagerly. "Thomas," Emma said firmly, "Mr. Quinn is busy and doesn't have time for—" "I'd be happy to show him Shadow tomorrow," Samuel interrupted. "If it's all right with you, of course." Emma hesitated. Men had shown interest in Thomas before, using him as a way to get to her, but something in Samuel Quinn's eyes told her his offer was genuine. "That's very kind, but I work all day," she explained. "Perhaps during your dinner break," he suggested. "I'll be in town until the day after tomorrow." Emma found herself nodding. "All right, thank you." The next afternoon, Emma took her dinner break earlier than usual. Thomas was practically bouncing with excitement as they made their way to the livery stable where the cowboys' horses were being kept. Samuel Quinn was waiting for them, hat in hand. He greeted Emma with a polite nod before turning his attention to Thomas. "Ready to meet Shadow?" he asked, and Thomas nodded enthusiastically. The black stallion was indeed impressive, standing at least 17 hands high with powerful muscles rippling beneath his glossy coat. Samuel lifted Thomas up so he could stroke the horse's nose. "He's so soft," Thomas exclaimed. "Horses like it when you talk gentle to them," Samuel explained. "They're strong, but they spook easy if you're too loud or sudden." Emma watched as the cowboy patiently showed her son how to feed Shadow an apple, how to stroke his neck, how to stand so the horse could see him. There was a gentleness to Samuel Quinn that contrasted with his rugged appearance. "Do you have any children of your own, Mr. Quinn?" Emma asked during a lull in the conversation. A shadow passed over his face. "No, madam, never found the right woman to settle down with." He paused, then added, "I lost my parents when I was about your boy's age. My uncle raised me on his ranch. That's how I got into this line of work." "I'm sorry about your parents," Emma said softly. He shrugged. "It was a long time ago, but I remember what it was like, being that young and having questions about the world." He glanced at Thomas, who was now chattering away to Shadow. "He's a fine boy. You should be proud." "I am," Emma replied, "though it's not always easy raising him alone." Samuel's eyes met hers, and for a moment, Emma felt as if he could see right through her, through the lies, through the careful facade she maintained. "People can be cruel," he said simply. "Yes," Emma agreed, "they can." Their time was up all too soon, and Emma had to return to work. As they left the stable, Samuel surprised her by saying, "I'd be happy to show Thomas around the corral tomorrow, where we're keeping some of the younger stock. He might enjoy seeing the calves." "That's very kind, but I couldn't impose again," Emma protested. "It's no imposition," Samuel insisted. "Truth be told, I enjoy the company. Gets lonely on the trail." Against her better judgment, Emma agreed. The next day found them at the corral on the edge of town, where Thomas delighted in the antics of the calves. Samuel lifted the boy onto the fence for a better view, his hands strong and sure. "Mr. Quinn," Thomas said suddenly, "my papa went away. Do you think he might be a cowboy like you?" Emma froze. Thomas rarely spoke of his father, and she'd never been entirely sure how much he remembered. Samuel glanced at Emma before answering carefully. "I don't know, son, but if he is, he's missing out on knowing a fine boy like you." Mama says he had important things to do, Thomas continued, oblivious to his mother's discomfort. Nothing's more important than taking care of your family, Samuel replied, his voice firm but gentle. That's a man's first duty. Emma felt tears prick at her eyes and turned away, pretending to watch a calf that was attempting to nurse from its mother. She felt Samuel's gaze on her but couldn't bring herself to meet it. The next morning, Samuel Quinn and his cowboys were due to leave Guthrie. Emma was sweeping the porch of the boarding house when he approached, leading his horse. "Mrs. Peterson," he began, then seemed to reconsider. "Emma, if I may, I wanted to thank you for allowing me to spend time with Thomas. He's a bright boy with a good heart." "It's I who should thank you," Emma replied. "He's been talking of nothing else but horses and cowboys since we met you." Samuel smiled, a genuine expression that transformed his weathered face. "I was wondering if I might call on you when I returned to Guthrie in the fall." Emma was taken aback. "Call on me? Mr. Quinn? Please call me Samuel." "Samuel," she amended. "I'm not sure that would be wise. Well, you must have heard the talk about me." His expression hardened slightly. "I've heard talk, yes. I don't put much stock in gossip." "It's not all gossip," Emma admitted. "My husband did leave me. He's not dead as I've let people believe." Samuel was quiet for a moment. "Does that change who you are, or what kind of mother you are to Thomas?" "In the eyes of this town, yes," Emma said bitterly. "Then perhaps the town's eyes need adjusting," Samuel replied. "I've seen enough of you to know you're a good woman, Emma Peterson. Your husband was a fool to leave you, and an even bigger fool to leave that boy." Emma couldn't speak past the lump in her throat. No one had defended her since she'd arrived in Guthrie. "I'll be back in October," Samuel continued. "May I call on you then?" Against her better judgment, against all the walls she'd built around her heart, Emma nodded. "Yes, you may." Samuel tipped his hat to her, mounted Shadow with fluid grace, and rode off to join his men. Emma watched him go, a strange mixture of hope and fear swirling in her chest. The summer passed in a blur of work and gossip. Emma's position at the boarding house became somewhat more secure as Mrs. Holloway came to appreciate her diligence and work ethic, but the townspeople continued to treat her with thinly veiled contempt. Thomas started school, and Emma's heart broke a little each time he came home in tears because the other children had teased him about not having a father. "Why did Papa leave us?" he asked one night as Emma tucked him into bed. "Was it because I was bad?" "No, sweetheart," Emma assured him, smoothing his hair back from his forehead. "It wasn't because of you. Your father, he just wasn't ready to be a father. It had nothing to do with you." "Billy Jenkins says a boy without a father is only half a person," Thomas said, his lower lip trembling. Emma felt a surge of anger. "Billy Jenkins is wrong. You are a whole wonderful person, Thomas. Don't ever let anyone tell you different." But she knew her words were cold comfort to a 5-year-old who couldn't understand why his father hadn't wanted him. As October approached, Emma found herself watching the Western Road with increasing frequency. She told herself it was foolish to expect Samuel Quinn to remember his promise to call on her men, made such promises easily and broke them just as easily, as she knew all too well. Yet a part of her couldn't help but hope. October came, bringing with it cooler temperatures and changing leaves. One crisp afternoon, as Emma was hanging laundry in the yard, she heard the now familiar sound of a cattle drive moving through town. Her heart quickened, and she found herself standing on tiptoes to see over the fence. The cattle moved past, followed by cowboys on horseback, but there was no sign of Samuel Quinn on his black stallion. Emma felt a sharp pang of disappointment. She'd been foolish to believe he would remember her. She returned to her work, determinedly pushing thoughts of blue eyes and gentle hands from her mind. She had Thomas to think about, and dreams of cowboys were for girls much younger and more naive than she was now. That evening, as Emma was serving dinner in the boarding house dining room, the front door opened, and Samuel Quinn stepped inside. He'd cleaned up. She noticed his face was freshly shaved, his clothes dust-free. He removed his hat as his eyes found her across the room, and he offered a smile that made her heart skip. "Mr. Quinn," Mrs. Holloway exclaimed, bustling forward. "We weren't expecting you. Do you need a room?" "No, madam," he replied, his eyes still on Emma. "I've just come to call on Mrs. Peterson, if she's available." A hush fell over the dining room. Emma was acutely aware of the stares, the whispers that would surely follow. But for once, she didn't care. "I'll be finished with my duties in an hour," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. Samuel nodded. "I'll wait on the porch then." As he left, the whispers began immediately. Emma ignored them, continuing her work with deliberate focus. When she was finally done, she checked on Thomas, who was already asleep in their room, then smoothed her hair and straightened her apron before stepping onto the porch. Samuel was sitting on a bench, hat in his hands. He stood as she appeared. "I wasn't sure you'd remember," Emma said, taking a seat on the bench and gesturing for him to join her. "I'm a man of my word," he replied simply, sitting beside her but maintaining a respectful distance. "The drive took longer than expected this year. We had trouble at the river crossing." They talked as the sky darkened and stars appeared overhead. Samuel told her about life on the ranch, about the cattle and the land. Emma found herself sharing stories of Thomas's school adventures, of her own childhood in Missouri, even, cautiously, of her dreams of teaching. "Why did you come to Guthrie?" Samuel asked eventually. "It's a hard place for a woman alone." Emma sighed. "I thought a new town might mean a fresh start. In St. Louis, everyone knew. Everyone knew Patrick had left me. I couldn't walk down the street without seeing pity or judgment in people's eyes." She paused. "I suppose I found the same thing here, just with different faces." "People fear what they don't understand," Samuel said, "and they judge what they fear." "And what do you understand, Samuel Quinn, that they don't?" Emma asked, meeting his gaze. "That sometimes life doesn't go as planned," he replied. "That sometimes good people end up in difficult situations through no fault of their own. That a woman raising her son alone deserves respect, not scorn." Emma felt tears threaten and blinked them away. "Thank you for saying that." Samuel reached out, and after a moment's hesitation, took her hand in his. His palm was calloused and warm. "I'd like to see you again tomorrow if you're willing." "I am," Emma said, surprising herself with how much she meant it. Over the next few days, Samuel called on Emma every evening. They walked through town together, ignoring the stares and whispers. He brought Thomas a small wooden horse he'd carved himself, and the boy's delight was worth every disapproving glance. On the fourth evening, as they sat on a bench in the small town square, Samuel turned to her with a serious expression. "Emma, I need to tell you something," he began. "I haven't been entirely forthright with you." Emma's heart sank. Here, it was the revelation she'd been half expecting. He was married, or promised to someone else, or... "I'm not just the foreman of the Circle Q," Samuel continued. "I own it. My uncle left it to me when he passed 5 years ago." Emma stared at him. "You own the ranch?" Samuel nodded, looking uncomfortable. "It's a good spread, about 10,000 acres. I've built it up over the years. We run about 2,000 head of cattle now." "Why didn't you say anything before?" Emma asked. "I've found that when people know I have money, they treat me differently," he explained. "I wanted you to know me as just Samuel, not as Mr. Quinn the rancher." Emma was quiet for a moment, processing this information. "I appreciate your honesty," she said finally, "though I'm not sure what it changes between us." Samuel took her hand. "It changes what I'm about to ask you." He took a deep breath. "Emma, I know we haven't known each other long, but I feel a connection to you that I can't explain. I'd like to court you properly, with the intention of, well, of marriage, eventually." Emma was speechless. Marriage? To a man she'd spent only a handful of evenings with? "Samuel, I don't know what to say," she stammered. "You hardly know me." "I know enough," he replied firmly. "I know you're strong and brave and kind. I know you love your son more than anything. I know I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since the day we met." "The town would never accept it," Emma protested. "They already think I'm improper." I don't give a damn what the town thinks, Samuel said, his voice low and intense, and neither should you. Emma pulled her hand away. It's easy for you to say that. You don't have to live here facing their judgment every day. You don't have to watch your child suffer because of rumors and gossip. Samuel was quiet for a moment, then said, You're right, I apologize. He stood. I shouldn't have presumed. I'll leave you be. As he turned to go, Emma caught his arm. Wait, I didn't say no. He looked back at her. Hope evident in his eyes. I just need time, Emma continued. It's overwhelming, and I have Thomas to consider. Samuel nodded. Of course. Take all the time you need. I'll be in town for another week before I need to return to the ranch. The next day, as Emma was cleaning one of the boarding house rooms, she overheard a conversation that made her blood run cold. Can you believe Samuel Quinn is courting that Peterson woman? Said a female voice she recognized as belonging to Edith Wilson, the banker's wife. It's shameful, replied another woman. A man like him could have his pick of respectable women, yet he chooses a woman whose husband abandoned her. What does that say about his judgment? I heard he's been spending time with her boy, too, said Edith, playing father to another man's child. It's unnatural. Well, I for one will not be receiving them socially if they do marry, declared the second woman, and I'll make sure my Josephine doesn't play with that boy. Who knows what sort of values he's being raised with, without a father's guidance. Emma stood frozen, dust rag in hand, as the women's footsteps receded down the hallway. Their words echoed in her mind, bringing back memories of similar conversations she'd overheard in St. Louis after Patrick left. That evening, when Samuel called on her, Emma was distant and preoccupied. They walked to the edge of town where a small creek provided a modicum of privacy. Something's troubling you, Samuel observed, his voice gentle. Emma sighed. I overheard some women talking about us today, about you courting me. Samuel's expression hardened. What did they say? Nothing I haven't heard before, Emma replied wearily. That I'm not respectable, that Thomas is somehow lacking because he doesn't have a father, that you could do better. That's nonsense, Samuel said firmly. Is it? Emma challenged. You could have any unmarried woman in this territory, Samuel. Women from good families with spotless reputations. Why choose me and all my complications? Samuel was quiet for a long moment, looking out at the creek. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and earnest. When I was 7 years old, my parents died of typhoid within days of each other. My uncle took me in, but he was a hard man who'd never wanted children. He did his duty by me, fed me, clothed me, taught me to work, but there was no warmth in it. I grew up feeling like a burden. He turned to face Emma, his eyes intense. The first time I saw you with Thomas, I saw love, pure, unconditional love, the kind I wished for as a boy, and I saw strength, the strength it takes to face a hostile world every day for the sake of your child. That's why I choose you, Emma. Not despite your complications, but because of who they've made you. Tears spilled down Emma's cheeks. She hadn't realized how desperately she'd needed to hear those words to be seen not as deficient or damaged, but as worthy because of her struggles, not in spite of them. Samuel reached out and gently wiped away her tears with his thumb. I won't press you for an answer now, but know this. I'm not afraid of what people might say or think. I know my own mind and heart. The next day, Emma found Thomas sitting alone on the back steps of the boarding house. His small shoulders slumped. What's wrong, sweetheart? She asked, sitting beside him. Mrs. Wilson told Josephine she can't play with me anymore, Thomas said, his voice small and hurt. She said it's because I don't have a papa to teach me right from wrong. Emma felt a surge of anger so intense it nearly took her breath away. That's ridiculous, Thomas. You are the kindest, most well-behaved boy I know. Mrs. Wilson she's wrong. Thomas looked up at her with tears in his eyes. Why did Papa leave us, Mama? Really? Emma took a deep breath. She'd never told Thomas the full truth, wanting to protect him from the knowledge that his father had chosen to abandon them. but perhaps it was time for a version of the truth. "Your father wasn't ready to be a father," she said gently. "Some men aren't. It wasn't about you, Thomas. It was never about you. It was about his own failings." "Will I ever have a papa?" Thomas asked. Emma hesitated. "I don't know, sweetheart. Would you like that?" Thomas nodded. "I like Mr. Quinn. He knows about horses, and he doesn't talk to me like I'm a baby. Do you think he could be my papa?" Emma's heart squeezed. "I don't know, Thomas. That's a very big question." That evening, when Samuel called, Emma suggested they take Thomas and go for a walk to the creek. As they walked, Thomas ran ahead, chasing grasshoppers and picking up interesting stones. "He asked me today if you might be his papa someday," Emma said quietly, watching her son. Samuel's step faltered. "What did you tell him?" "That I didn't know. That it was a big question." Emma turned to face him. "It is a big question, Samuel. You'd be taking on not just a wife, but a child. A child that isn't yours by blood, that some will always see as less than because of the circumstances of his birth." "Blood doesn't make a family," Samuel replied firmly. "Love does, and I already care deeply for Thomas." "And what about me?" Emma asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Do you love me, or just the idea of saving me?" Samuel stopped walking and turned to face her fully. "Emma Peterson, I love you for your strength, your kindness, your determination. I love the way you look at your son, the way you stand tall despite the whispers, the way you refuse to be broken by circumstances that would crush many. I don't want to save you. You've already saved yourself. I just want the privilege of walking beside you." Emma felt something inside her shift. A wall crumbling that she'd built around her heart after Patrick's betrayal. "I think I love you too," she admitted, "but I'm scared. Loving someone means giving them the power to hurt you." "It also means giving them the chance to bring you joy," Samuel countered. "I can't promise we won't ever have hard times, Emma, but I can promise that I will never willingly cause you pain. I will never walk away from you or Thomas. That's a vow I'll make now and again in front of a preacher if you'll have me." Emma looked at Samuel, really looked at him, at the sincerity in his blue eyes, at the strength in his work-worn hands, at the gentleness with which he treated her son. And she made her decision. "Yes," she said simply. "Yes, I'll marry you, Samuel Quinn." His face lit up with joy, and he stepped forward as if to embrace her, then stopped, glancing at Thomas, who was still chasing grasshoppers a few yards away. "May I kiss you?" he asked. Emma nodded, and Samuel closed the distance between them, one hand coming up to cup her cheek as he pressed his lips to hers. The kiss was gentle at first, then deeper as Emma responded, her hands finding his shoulders. "Mama!" Thomas's voice broke them apart. He was staring at them with wide eyes. Emma flushed, but Samuel knelt down to Thomas's level. "Thomas, I've asked your mother to marry me, and she said yes. That means, if it's all right with you, I'd like to be your father." Thomas's eyes grew even wider. "Really? You want to be my papa?" "More than anything," Samuel replied solemnly. "I promise to take care of you and your mother, to teach you everything I know about horses and cattle and being a man. And I promise to love you as my own son, because that's what you'll be." Thomas looked from Samuel to Emma, then back again. A slow smile spread across his face. "Then I'll be your son," he declared, throwing his arms around Samuel's neck. Samuel hugged the boy tightly, his eyes meeting Emma's over Thomas's shoulder. In that moment, Emma knew she'd made the right decision. The news of their engagement spread through Guthrie like wildfire. The reactions were mixed. Some, like Clara from the boarding house kitchen, were genuinely happy for them. Others were openly disapproving. "You're making a mistake, Quinn," the banker, Mr. Wilson, told Samuel bluntly when they met on the street. "That woman's damaged goods, and that boy. Who knows what blood runs in his veins?" Samuel's expression had darkened dangerously. "That woman is my fiancé, Wilson, and that boy will be my son. I suggest you mind your words carefully when speaking of my family." The confrontation became town gossip within hours, but it had an unexpected effect. Samuel Quinn was respected in Guthrie. He was a successful rancher, a fair employer, and a man known for his integrity. His public defense of Emma and Thomas made some people reconsider their harsh judgments. Mrs. Holloway, who had witnessed the exchange, surprised Emma by telling her, "That man of yours has backbone. You're lucky to have found him." "I know," Emma replied simply. They were married 2 weeks later in a small ceremony at the town's church. Clara and Mrs. Holloway attended, along with a few of Samuel's ranch hands, and, surprisingly, Mayor Fitzgerald, who seemed to have had a change of heart. "Every town needs second chances. Mrs. Peterson, soon to be Mrs. Quinn," he told her before the ceremony. "I wish you happiness." Emma wore a new dress of pale blue that Samuel had insisted on buying for her, and Thomas stood proudly beside them, holding the rings on a small cushion that Clara had sewn. As they exchanged vows, Emma felt a sense of rightness, of coming home. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Samuel kissed her with a tenderness that brought tears to her eyes. That afternoon, they left Guthrie for the Circle Q ranch. Emma and Thomas rode in a wagon driven by one of Samuel's hands, while Samuel rode alongside on Shadow. As the town receded behind them, Emma felt a weight lifting from her shoulders, the weight of judgment, of whispers, of constantly having to prove herself worthy. The journey to the ranch took most of the afternoon. As they crested a hill, Emma got her first view of what would be her new home. The Circle Q spread out below them, a large, well-built ranch house surrounded by barns, corrals, and bunkhouses, all nestled in a green valley with a creek running through it. "It's beautiful," she breathed. Samuel, who had ridden up beside the wagon, smiled. "I've been adding to the house over the years. Never quite knew why until now." He reached over and took her hand. "Welcome home, Emma Quinn." The ranch hands had prepared a welcome for them, a banner hung over the main house door reading, "Welcome Mrs. Quinn and Thomas," and a feast had been laid out in the dining room. Emma was touched by their acceptance, by the easy way they included Thomas in their conversations, showing him the house and the nearest corral where the gentlest horses were kept. That night, after Thomas had been put to bed in his new room, a room Samuel had prepared specially, with a bookshelf and a window overlooking the corrals, Emma stood in the master bedroom, marveling at the changes in her life. The room was large and comfortable, with a massive 4-poster bed, a dresser, and a washstand. Samuel had explained that his mother's furniture had been stored in the attic, and he'd brought it down for her. "My mother would have liked you," he told her as he entered the room, closing the door behind him. "She was strong, like you." Emma turned to face her husband, a word she was still getting used to. "Thank you for giving us a home, Samuel, for giving Thomas a father." Samuel crossed the room and took her in his arms. "Thank you for giving me a family," he replied, his voice husky with emotion. "I've been alone for so long, Emma. The ranch has been successful, but it's been empty. Now it's full of life, your life, Thomas's life." He kissed her, and this time there was no hesitation, no holding back. Emma responded with all the love and passion she'd kept locked away for years, and when they finally came together as husband and wife, it felt like the beginning of something profound and lasting. Life at the Circle Q settled into a rhythm. Emma quickly took over the running of the household, which had been managed haphazardly by a succession of ranch cooks before her arrival. She put her education to good use by teaching Thomas and even some of the younger ranch hands who'd had little formal schooling. Samuel proved to be everything he'd promised: a devoted husband to Emma and a loving father to Thomas. He taught the boy to ride, starting him on a gentle mare named Daisy, and included him in the daily ranch activities whenever it was safe to do so. "Papa, look," Thomas called one afternoon, about 6 months after their arrival at the Circle Q. He was sitting astride Daisy in the corral, directing the horse with confidence through a series of simple commands that Samuel had taught him. "Well done," Samuel called back, pride evident in his voice. He turned to Emma, who was watching from the corral fence. "He's a natural, just like his father." Emma's heart swelled at Samuel's words, at the easy way he claimed Thomas as his own, with no qualifiers or hesitations. As winter turned to spring, Emma discovered she was expecting a child. When she told Samuel, his face lit up with a joy so pure it took her breath away. "A baby," he said in wonder, placing his hand gently on her still flat stomach. "Our baby." "Are you happy?" Emma asked, though she could see the answer in his eyes. "Happier than I ever thought possible," Samuel replied, gathering her into his arms. "How do you think Thomas will take the news?" "I think he'll be excited to be a big brother," Emma said, "but we should make sure he knows this doesn't change how much we love him." When they told Thomas about the baby, his reaction surprised them. Instead of excitement or jealousy, he looked thoughtful. "Will the baby have the same papa as me?" he asked. Samuel knelt down to Thomas's level. "Yes, son, I'll be this baby's papa just like I'm yours." Thomas nodded, seemingly satisfied. "Good. Because you're the best papa, and the baby should have the best too." Emma's pregnancy progressed without complications. Samuel was attentive and protective, insisting she rest when she was tired, and hiring additional help for the house so she wouldn't have to work too hard. In early November, Emma gave birth to a son they named William James Quinn, after Samuel's father and Emma's grandfather. Thomas was fascinated by his tiny brother, wanting to help with feedings and diaper changes, and proudly telling the ranch hands that he was a big brother now. As Emma watched her husband holding their newborn son, with Thomas pressed against his side, peering at the baby with curiosity and affection, she felt a sense of completion, of having found her place in the world after years of searching. One afternoon the following spring, Emma was sitting on the porch, nursing William while watching Samuel and Thomas work with a young colt in the nearby corral. The scene was so peaceful, so perfect, that she almost didn't notice the approaching rider until he was nearly at the house. The man was thin and trail-worn, his clothes dusty from travel. As he dismounted and approached the porch, Emma felt a jolt of recognition that sent ice through her veins. Patrick. "Hello, Emma," he said, his voice just as she remembered it, smooth and confident, with an underlying current of charm that had once captivated her. "It's been a long time." Emma clutched William closer to her chest, her heart pounding. "What are you doing here, Patrick?" He gestured vaguely. "I heard you'd married well. Thought I'd come see for myself." His eyes dropped to William. "I see congratulations are in order." "You need to leave," Emma said firmly, standing despite her trembling legs. "You have no place here." Patrick's expression hardened. "I have a son here, don't I? Thomas is still my blood, regardless of who's playing father to him now." "You gave up any claim to Thomas when you walked out on us," Emma replied, her voice icy with suppressed fury. "He has a father now, a real one, who loves him and would never abandon him." "Mama?" Thomas's voice came from behind Patrick. He'd left the corral and was standing a few yards away, looking confused and a little frightened. Samuel was right behind him, his expression thunderous as he took in the scene. Patrick turned, his eyes widening slightly as he saw Thomas. "Hello, son," he said. "You've grown." Thomas looked from Patrick to Emma, confusion evident on his face. "Mama," Emma swallowed hard. "Thomas, this is Patrick. I'm your real father," Patrick said bluntly. Samuel stepped forward, placing a protective hand on Thomas's shoulder. "That's not how I'd define real father," he said, his voice controlled but with an edge of steel. "A real father is there every day, not just when it's convenient." Patrick's eyes narrowed. "And you are?" "Samuel Quinn, Emma's husband and Thomas's father in every way that matters." Samuel turned to Thomas. "Son, would you take your brother inside for a moment? Your mother and I need to speak with this man." Thomas nodded, still looking confused but willing to trust Samuel. Emma carefully handed William to him, showing him how to support the baby's head, then watched as her sons went into the house. Once the boys were inside, Samuel turned to Patrick. "State your business and then leave. You're not welcome here." Patrick's charm vanished, replaced by a calculating look. "I've fallen on hard times. Thought maybe my son's new father might be willing to help out an old friend of the family." "Blackmail?" Emma said incredulously. You abandon us for years, then show up expecting money? Not blackmail, Patrick replied smoothly. Just a request for assistance. Of course, if it's denied, I might have to exercise my rights as Thomas's biological father. Courts tend to side with blood, you know. Samuel took a step forward, his hands clenched into fists. You listen to me carefully. Thomas is my son now, legally, morally, in every way that counts. I adopted him properly when Emma and I married. The paperwork is filed in Guthrie and in Oklahoma City. You have no rights here. Patrick looked startled, and Emma realized that Samuel had never mentioned the adoption to her. He must have arranged it quietly, ensuring Thomas's security without making a show of it. Furthermore, Samuel continued, his voice low and dangerous, if you ever come near my family again, if you ever try to contact Thomas or upset Emma in any way, I'll make you regret the day you were born. Am I clear? Patrick looked from Samuel to Emma, then back again. Whatever he saw in Samuel's eyes must have convinced him of the seriousness of the threat, because he nodded slowly. Perfectly clear, he said, his voice less confident now. I'll be on my way. One more thing, Samuel added as Patrick turned to go. There's $100 in an envelope on the fence post by your horse. Take it and use it to start somewhere far from here. It's the only money you'll ever get from us. Patrick looked surprised, then nodded again, a flicker of something like shame crossing his face. Without another word, he mounted his horse, took the envelope, and rode away. Emma watched him go, a complex mix of emotions swirling within her: anger, relief, a strange sense of closure. She felt Samuel's arm go around her shoulders. Are you all right? He asked gently. Emma leaned into his strength. I am now. She looked up at him. You adopted Thomas? Samuel nodded. The day after our wedding. I wanted to make sure he was legally mine, that no one could ever take him away from us. I should have told you, but I didn't want to bring up painful memories. Tears filled Emma's eyes. You are an extraordinary man, Samuel Quinn. Just a man who loves his family, he replied simply, pulling her closer. Inside, they found Thomas sitting in the rocking chair, carefully holding William and singing softly to him a lullaby that Emma recognized as one she often sang. Is that man gone? Thomas asked as they entered. Yes, he's gone, Samuel assured him, and he won't be coming back. Thomas was quiet for a moment, then asked, was he really my first father? Emma and Samuel exchanged glances, then Samuel knelt beside the rocking chair. Yes, Thomas. He was there when you were born, but he left when you were very little. Why did he come back? Thomas asked. He thought he might get something from us, Emma said carefully. But he was wrong. He has no place in our family. Thomas considered this, his young face serious. I already have a papa, he said finally, looking at Samuel. I don't need another one. Samuel's eyes shone with unshed tears as he reached out to ruffle Thomas's hair. That's right, son. And you'll always have me, I promise. Life at the Circle Q continued, the incident with Patrick fading into memory as the days passed. Emma watched her sons grow Thomas, becoming more confident on horseback, learning to help with the cattle, soaking up Samuel's lessons like a sponge. William taking his first steps, saying his first words, his personality emerging as a blend of both his parents, stubborn like his mother, thoughtful like his father. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Thomas playing with William in the yard, Samuel took Emma's hand. Are you happy, Emma? He asked, his voice soft with wonder, as if he still couldn't quite believe their life together. Emma squeezed his hand. Happier than I ever dreamed possible, she replied truthfully. When I came to Guthrie, I was just hoping for a job, a roof over our heads. I never expected all of this. The town shamed you for the father being gone, Samuel said, watching Thomas show William a butterfly that had landed on a nearby bush. I remember thinking, when I first heard the gossip, then I'll be the father right now. It was an impulsive thought, but it felt right. It still does. It was right, Emma agreed, leaning her head against his shoulder. You were what we needed, what I needed. Not just a father for Thomas, but a partner for me. Someone who saw me, really saw me, when everyone else just saw a woman who'd been left behind. Samuel turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. I saw a woman of incredible strength and grace. I still do, every day. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, Emma looked at her family, at the husband who had chosen her despite the whispers, at the sons who were growing strong and confident under the shelter of his love, and knew that the long road from shame to joy had been worth every step. In the years that followed, the Circle Q prospered. Emma gave birth to a daughter they named Grace, who had her father's blue eyes and her mother's determined spirit. Thomas grew into a fine young man, taking on more responsibility at the ranch and showing a natural talent for working with the horses. William and Grace thrived in the open spaces of the ranch, surrounded by love and security. The people of Guthrie eventually revised their opinions of Emma. When she and Samuel visited town, they were greeted with respect, even warmth. The mayor's wife once confided to Emma, "You showed us all what real strength looks like. We were wrong about you, and I'm sorry for it." But Emma no longer needed their approval. She had found her worth not in their eyes, but in the eyes of the man who had seen her value when no one else would, in the children who called her Mama with love and trust, in the home she had built with her own 2 hands and heart. And when visitors came to the Circle Q, they often remarked on what a fine family the Quinns were, on how fortunate the children were to have such devoted parents. Emma would smile at such comments, catching Samuel's eye across the room, both of them knowing the truth that it was not fortune but choice that had made their family. The choice to see beyond judgment, to offer love where it was needed, to build something lasting from the ruins of what had been lost. In the end, that was the true legacy of the Circle Q, not the cattle or the land, but the love that had transformed a shamed woman and a lonely man into something stronger than either could have been alone. A family, bound not by blood alone, but by the daily choice to stand together against whatever life might bring, secure in the knowledge that they were exactly where they belonged.